Who were your clarinet teachers?
So this bassoon player was my first professor, who I mentioned. Then later I went to the special music school. Before that, when this bassoon professor realized he might be not qualified enough with clarinet to help me on my way, he asked a really good friend of him, who was the clarinet professor of the university in Debrecen, which is the closest big city to my hometown. And I studied with the professor from the university when I was 11. His name was Miklós Paraczki, and he helped me a lot and corrected all the techniques which were wrong. And later I went to the secondary school and the conservatory, and I also had one clarinet professor there. And later at the Liszt Academy, I studied with Professor Tibor Dietrich, which was a very funny story, because when I had the first lesson, it was very late of the year. It was October, because they did something at the Liszt Academy. They had some overhaul of the heating system, reconstruction, something like that. And I had only one lesson with him. And he was mentioning, like, oh, this is not good, you have to change this, and so on. And next week I didn't have a lesson because he played in the orchestra, in the radio orchestra, and they went on a tour. And when the orchestra came back from a tour, it was 27th of October. And next day, 28th of October, there was an audition. So on my second clarinet lesson with my professor at the Liszt Academy, I was his colleague already. So that was very funny. But honestly, I learned a lot. Most of the time, or maybe I would say the most, what I claim to know about music and playing music, I learned from chamber music partners and orchestra colleagues. I was very lucky to have really professional players as chamber music partners at an early age. And I have to say, Marta Gulyás, she heard me once to play in a festival, and she grabbed me and she forced me to study with her at the Liszt Academy. And at the same time, all the time when she had some invitation, she took me to play a concert. So in the first year when I studied with her, I was already the principal clarinet of the radio, but I played maybe 15, 20 concerts with this amazing pianist who was absolutely fantastic. And she is fantastic also now at age, I don't say how old is she, but so she is absolutely a great chamber musician, and she dedicated her time during our rehearsals to teach me, basically. So when we had a rehearsal for the next concert, she just gave me lessons and corrected everything what I did, let's say, incorrectly, or I could have done better. And of course, on the concert, she was focusing on how we played together, but on the rehearsals, she was just focusing on my playing. And I would say that was the most important progression and development in my life musically, who I became who I am today.
Why do you think the Hungarian clarinet school is so strong?
Everybody says the Hungarian clarinet class is very strong. And, as the part of it, I might not be able to describe precisely what's the reason, but definitely when I started to study music, that time behind the Iron Curtain, being a musician was such a job which allowed you to discover the world, to be able to travel, to be a little bit more free than other people. And because you were able to travel, and if you could get a good job, and those days the orchestra musicians, they had a really nice salary, and they could travel abroad, so they could make even more money. And they had a very nice quality of life. So maybe that's why, and also the freedom, and also the being a little bit out of the regime system made this job, being a musician, like a very desirable profession. And many people went to this profession. And of course, we can't deny the success and the incredible helpful education of the Kodály system, the Kodály system. And there were such numbers of musicians, music students, which and also it was built up like kind of a pyramid, you know. So there were like certain levels, certain measurements, like national competitions, and also competition in the county, like 3-county competition, national competition. So it was basically narrowing the quality, and at the end, the students applied to the Liszt Academy, and they accepted 2-3 students maybe out of 35 those days, and the competition was really very strong. And of course, we had significant, fantastic clarinet players, fantastic musicians as a role models. Like we can't say Béla Kovács didn't have an impact on every single clarinet player in Hungary. Even though I didn't study with him, I just had a few chit chats. Sometimes we played a few things together, but I'd never been his student. But of course, I did have his recordings, and I listened his recordings, how he does certain things, and of course you try to imitate. So I have the feeling like all of these together, and the most important is probably just one person who has a very big influence on all the others, because he is like a role model to all the students. So just one person can turn and change the entire level of a music education, or let's say in this case the clarinet life. You can say names also in Spain, and let's say in Valencia, where is the clarinet school is really strong, or in Portugal, in Porto, or in Poland, Katowice, or in Czech Republic, Ostrava, Brno, Prague, and it's a bit more rich, or Slovenia, Ljubljana. So always one person starts, and he gives such quality to the profession, and educate some students, and later those students are helping to bring younger students in 10 years, 15, 20 years later, and that's how the system builds. So it's also like kind of a pyramid, just it's opposite, because it's one person on the top influencing all the education, all the school system, basically.
A piece you want to talk about?
Well, as a clarinet player, the piece what I would like to talk about is probably the Mozart concerto, and not just because this is the most important concerto for us, but because I have the privilege to have an amazing, fantastic Boxwood basset clarinet, which is unfortunately not here right now because it's under an oil treatment because of the boxwood. But I have here this grand deal, which is equally beautiful. And the reason why I would like to talk about, because now we are living in a very special time. Imagine in the mid-18th century, from let's say 1740, when Mozart wrote the first clarinet concerto and was performed, until the time when Mozart has written the clarinet concerto, and basically that 50 years, the clarinet was an instrument which was developing an incredible speed. And there were so many different variations of the instrument, like 3 keys, 5 keys, 7 keys, so on. And Stadler had a special instruments, B flat and A basset clarinets. Actually, probably they were planning to have a G basset clarinet because Mozart started the A major concerto in G major, just he hasn't finished, he switched for A major. And that was perhaps because they wanted to have the full family, like E flat, D, B flat, C, B flat, A, and they had also the F basset horn, so they wanted the G basset horn, maybe, I don't know. And that time the time for the clarinet was incredibly interesting, and because Stadler lost the manuscripts, or sold, or who knows, we never know, because Stadler was quite a character, as we know. We lost also the instruments, and therefore we lost the Mozart concerto. And in the last couple of decades, of course, everybody played it on a clarinet. And if you go for any kind of audition, that's the first thing, like you have to play the exposition of the first movement of the Mozart concerto on clarinet. And nowadays, the time is changing, so the instrument makers, the companies, they are having a really strong competition to each other, and they are making always new developments of the instrument, which actually makes me very happy, and we clarinet players should be all happy about that. And playing the Mozart concerto on the original range is kind of a big, came back into fashion somehow. The first person was Kratokvil in Prague, who tried to figure out like what was the original way of the Mozart concerto, not the clarinet playing way. And in the last couple of decades, we also experienced that like we buy a car and that's not made for the eternity. You have to change after 8 years or so. You buy a washing machine and it runs perfectly for 6 years, and then you have to repair. And you buy a new mobile phone or a computer and it works perfectly, but then you change. And luckily, the world is like this, and now we can afford to have more instruments than one. And maybe this is the time when we should encourage everybody to experience how to play the Mozart concerto on the basset clarinet, not on the clarinet, because it opens a completely different perspective of performing the concerto. So when you have the basset clarinet and you play the original range, certain things are very different than on the clarinet. So this register, Mozart used this because on the boxwood instruments, the low register sounded really very resonant, and actually it was loud. We always believe that the instrument, the clarinet, doesn't sound loud in the bottom and it projects very well in the high register. But with the boxwood instrument, this was different. And if you have this basset clarinet and you put an octave lower the range, immediately it helps to bring out that character. And so when you play this passage, so many people are playing an octave lower, higher as a kind of a solo virtuoso stuff. But actually, originally, this is the bass as a function in the concerto. And if you have this instrument, some things gives you some new ideas. Also in the second movement, the conversation between the soprano and the bass becomes completely different. Immediately more rich, more velvety, and more full-bodied sound. And maybe the third movement is the most important. So it's so much different if you have the 2 octaves difference instead of 1 octave. And of course, all the arpeggios are not broken, but that's probably not the most important feature of using the basset clarinet. Of course, it's important, but for me the most important is like when you try the concerto on this instrument, it gives you completely new ideas about the phrasing and the characters.